The nanny's job ended without a single reason, but a secret from the Mafia boss's daughter would leave everyone stunned. Her suitcase fell to the ground when she heard the words that destroyed her world. Emma Sullivan could not believe it. After 3 years of devotion to little Charlie, she was being dismissed without any cause. She packed her things, fighting to conceal the tears that streamed down her cheeks. Nobody could figure out what went wrong until the daughter whispered a secret to her father. The revelation shattered the most powerful man in Charleston. If this story has captured your heart, tell us where you are watching from and subscribe so you never miss another. Now, back to the story. The burden of injustice felt heavier than any luggage. Emma Sullivan walked down the Great Hall's stone staircase, marking every step. She hoped counting would erase the moment. 20 steps separated the front door from the iron gate. 20 steps to abandon 3 entire years of her existence. The Charleston sun bathed the white colonial mansion in a brilliant amber light. She remembered how much she loved this time of day, when the sun would stream into Charlie's room. They would make shadow animals on the ceiling, a bird, a butterfly, a star. She refused to look back. Looking back would only bring more tears. She had already cried enough in the staff bathroom while she packed. 3 pairs of jeans, 5 shirts, and the light blue dress she wore for Charlie's 4th birthday. She also packed the hairbrush Charlie loved for her dolls, but she left the brush behind. It was part of the house, part of a life that was no longer hers. Rob stood by the polished black car, holding the door open. He was a quiet man, but his expression conveyed everything. He did not understand what was happening either. Nobody did. Perhaps that was for the best. If anyone asked her why she was leaving, she would have no answer. Alexander Thornton had just called her to his study that morning. In a voice as flat as a business report, he stated her services were no longer required. There was no explanation. There was no warning. He did not even have the decency to look her in the eye. Emma slipped into the car, pressing her forehead against the cool glass of the window. The mansion shrank in the rearview mirror. With it, every part of the life she had built for 3 years disappeared. She had arrived at 24, a recent graduate from a small university with a degree in childhood education. Her only real experience was watching her niece over summer breaks. The agency had sent her as a temporary fill-in, but she became permanent when 2-year-old Charlie would not sleep for anyone else. The car drove past Waterfront Park with its massive oak trees. Emma used to bring Charlie there to see the birds on hot afternoons. Charlie adored throwing breadcrumbs and shrieking with delight as sparrows battled for the biggest piece. Sometimes, Alex would appear unexpectedly, escaping a meeting. The three of them would sit on a wrought iron bench, sharing vanilla ice cream with caramel. Those moments were rare, but they were precious. In them, the powerful man seemed to forget the world of numbers and meetings that defined his life. He was just a father, present with his daughter and her nanny. The car continued past the familiar ice cream parlor, down old roads with pastel-colored houses, and over the bridge that crossed the Cooper River. Emma shut her eyes, letting silent tears fall. She was not crying from anger, even though she had every right to be. She was crying from a deep sense of loss, for something that had not even fully ended yet. She would miss the smell of lavender from the fresh sheets Maggie prepared. She would miss the scent of the strong coffee Rob made each morning. She would miss the sound of Charlie's laughter echoing through the halls during their games of hide-and-seek. And though she knew she should not, she would miss Alex's quiet presence when he came home late and found them watching cartoons in their pajamas. He would always stop in the doorway, watching them for a few moments before speaking. Emma always acted like she did not notice, even as her heart beat faster under his gaze. The vehicle came to a halt before a rundown building on the edge of Charleston. Emma got out, gave Rob a quiet nod of thanks, and dragged her small suitcase up 3 flights of groaning stairs. Her rented room was behind a retired widow's home. It held a narrow bed with faded sheets, a stained 2-burner stove, and walls with peeling paint. A small window offered a view of a dark alley. She sat on the mattress without switching on the light. The darkness wrapped around her like a cold shroud. 3 years. For 3 years, she had been surrounded by light, by laughter, by a feeling of home. Now, it had vanished like a dream at dawn. She stared at her empty hands, asking herself if any of it had been real. Had she ever really been a part of that life? Or was she just a temporary guest, pushed out when she was no longer useful? The tears returned, but this time she was alone. There was no one to hide them from. In that tiny dark room, Emma Sullivan cried for 3 lost years. She cried for a love that was never spoken, and for the little girl she had cherished as her own, a girl she would never hold again. Emma Sullivan never had a family. As a newborn, she was discovered in a cardboard box at St. Mary's Orphanage outside Atlanta. She had no name, no documents, and no clue about who had brought her into the world. Other children in the home often had a small keepsake, like a photo, a letter, or a toy from a parent. Emma had nothing but a worn gray wool blanket she was wrapped in. She grew up between the orphanage's cold walls, learning to depend on herself at an early age because there was no one else. Children came and were adopted by loving families, but Emma always remained. Perhaps she was too reserved, too withdrawn. Or maybe no one wanted a child who came from nothing. At 18, she walked out with a small bag and a few $100s she had saved from odd jobs. She worked as a waitress, a dishwasher, and a hotel cleaner, doing anything she could to pay for college. For 6 long years, she juggled work and her studies. She graduated with an education degree and hands toughened by hard labor. No relatives attended her graduation. No one was there to take her picture. She stood by herself in a sea of celebrating students and their families, wondering if her life would ever be more than a lonely existence. The employment agency assigned her to the Thornton mansion on a fall day 3 years ago. She had just turned 24. The position was meant to be temporary, just a few weeks covering for the head nanny's vacation. Emma did not have high expectations. She just needed to make enough money for the next month's rent. But life had a different plan. Charlie Thornton was 2 years old at the time. Her mother had passed away in a tragic car accident just 6 months before. The little girl cried constantly. From morning until night, and from night until morning, the grief seemed to have settled deep into her bones, even though she was too young to understand her loss. The previous nanny, a woman of 55 with over 30 years of experience, had quit after only 2 months. She informed Mr. Thornton that she had never encountered a child in so much pain and felt unable to help her heal. On Emma's first day, she found Charlie crying on the living room floor. It was not the typical cry of a toddler wanting attention. It was a broken, desperate sound, like a tiny lost soul begging for comfort. Emma did not know what to do. She had no special training or tricks, only the instinct of someone who also knew what it was like to be alone. She sat down on the floor near Charlie and picked up a storybook from a nearby shelf. She started to read, not in a monotone, but using a unique voice for every character. A deep growl for the bear, a high-pitched squeak for the mouse, and a warm, gentle voice for the sun. Charlie's crying stopped. Her green eyes, still wet with tears, looked at Emma with curiosity, then with fascination, and finally, with a hint of trust. She crawled slowly towards Emma until she was right beside her. When the story was over, Charlie raised her little arms, asking to be held. Emma lifted the small child, feeling her warmth and smelling the sweet scent of her shampoo. In that instant, something inside Emma shifted forever. From that day forward, the two were inseparable. Charlie would only fall asleep if Emma sang to her. She would only eat if Emma was the one feeding her. She would only play outside if she was holding Emma's hand. The temporary job became a permanent one, and laughter gradually returned to the quiet mansion. It was then that Emma started to see him. Alex Thornton, the formidable man feared throughout Charleston, would often stand in the shadows of the living room doorway late at night. He would silently watch Emma and Charlie as they enjoyed cartoons. He never said a word. He just stood there. But Emma felt his gaze on her. She acted as if she was unaware, focusing on the television or on Charlie's golden hair. But her heart always beat a little faster. Her pulse hammered in her chest. She understood this was a forbidden feeling. A nanny was supposed to be a professional, nothing more. But emotions do not ask for permission. They had grown inside her like a quiet seed in the dark, taking hold no matter how she tried to starve them of light. The fight against them had grown harder these last few months. It happened every time Alex's hand grazed hers as he passed Charlie to her. It happened every time he offered a tired smile at the end of a long day. It happened when the three of them sat together, feeling like a true family. But Emma always forced the truth back into her mind. She did not belong. She was an employee, that was all. Her heart, however, had stopped listening to her head. And that was why the pain today felt so immense. Everything was perfect until this morning. After Emma walked out, the silence in the mansion was heavy. The air felt thick, making each breath a deliberate effort. Downstairs, Maggie O'Brien stood at the kitchen sink, her hands deep in soapy water. For over 20 years, she had been the housekeeper for the Thornton family. She saw Alex change from a wild boy into the powerful man who made the city tremble. She saw him love Isabel, marry her, and then lose her, nearly breaking apart after she was gone. Then she saw Emma arrive. She saw light return to the dark halls of the house. She saw Charlie's laughter come back. She saw Alex start to live again, not just survive. And that morning, she saw him tear it all down in less than 5 minutes. The sound of a pan hitting the steel sink was a loud protest. Maggie said nothing when Alex told her his decision. It was not her role to challenge him or to tell her boss he was making the worst mistake of his life. But her eyes, which had seen too much in this home, spoke the words her lips could not. They showed disappointment, sorrow, and a flicker of contempt for a man she thought was wiser than this. On the second floor, behind a heavy oak door, Alex Thornton sat frozen in his study. Numbers and graphs filled his computer screen, but his mind saw none of it. He could only see Emma's face as she left his office. Her warm brown eyes were filled with shock and pain. She did not cry in front of him. She did not plead or ask for a reason. She just gave a stiff nod and said, "Yes, Mr. Thornton," before turning and walking away. The way she used Mr. Thornton instead of Alex, her private name for him, was like a blade twisting in his gut. He had done the right thing. He repeated it to himself, a desperate chant. He had done the right thing. He had done the right thing. But if it was the right thing, why did it feel like he had just shattered something priceless? It began with a phone call that morning, before he had even had his coffee. It was Victoria Ashford, the woman he nearly married 8 years ago. She had reappeared in his life 4 months earlier at a charity gala. She was more beautiful now, more polished, more captivating. She told him she had heard about Isabel, and was so sorry. She was there if he ever needed a friend. Alex, exhausted from being a single father while managing his dark enterprise, took the hand she offered. He never questioned her reasons. The meeting started slowly. A dinner one week, a lunch the next. Victoria always knew the perfect thing to say. She always pretended to be interested in Charlie, even when the little girl was obviously distant. And that morning her voice on the phone was a careful performance of worry. "I do not want to meddle, Alex, but I am so worried." He sat up, his brow furrowed. "Worried about what?" "About your nanny," Victoria said, pausing for dramatic effect. "The way she looks at you is not right, Alex. I saw it last weekend. She watches you not as an employer, but as something else." Alex remained silent. "An employee should not have that kind of feeling for her boss," Victoria continued. "I just want you to be aware. Who knows what she really wants? Your money? To become the next Mrs. Thornton? Women like her are masters of deception." Alex tried to defend her. "Emma is not like that. She has been here for 3 years and has never been inappropriate." But Victoria persisted. 3 years is a long time to earn someone's trust, is it not? Long enough to make you lower your guard. I only want you to be safe. You cannot be too safe, especially in your world. Those words planted a seed of doubt. In his world, the Mafia world, betrayal came from everywhere, even from those you held close. Suspicion was a tool for survival. He had seen too many men ruined by someone they trusted. He had seen his own father murdered by his closest friend. He had learned that trust was a luxury he could not afford. Once that seed was planted, it grew with terrifying speed. He began to see Emma's smiles and glances in a new, sinister light. Things that once brought him comfort now seemed like calculated moves through the lens Victoria had provided. He chose to eliminate the risk rather than believe what he had seen for 3 years. He listened to a woman from his past instead of the one who cared for his daughter every day. And now, in the quiet of his study, Alex Thornton feared he had just thrown away the one good thing left in his life. Victoria Ashford walked into the mansion that afternoon like a monarch surveying her new kingdom. Her red dress was expensive and fit her perfectly. Her heels clicked with authority on the marble floor. Her hair was perfectly curled, and her smile was a well-rehearsed masterpiece. She found Alex in the living room with his second glass of whiskey, his eyes fixed on something distant outside the window. I heard you took care of the situation, Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she placed a hand on his shoulder. You made the right choice, my love. Trust me. Alex said nothing. He just drank more of his whiskey and gave a tired nod. 8 years ago, Victoria Ashford and Alexander Thornton were supposed to be married. The invitations were sent, the church was booked, the dress was made. Victoria thought she was about to become Mrs. Thornton, the wife of Charleston's most powerful man, the queen of a vast fortune and a dangerous criminal empire. But then Isabel entered his life, an ordinary girl with no name, no money, and nothing but a pair of blue eyes and a smile that erased the world for Alex. He broke the engagement 2 weeks before the wedding, with no apology grand enough to cover her public shame. Victoria never forgot that humiliation. She waited patiently, like a predator. When Isabel died, she saw her opportunity. After an hour of offering empty words of comfort to Alex, Victoria asked to use the restroom, but she did not go there. Instead, she slipped into an empty hallway and pulled out her phone. The moment the call connected, her voice transformed from sweet to ice. Everything is proceeding as planned, she told her friend, the only one who knew the truth. The little nanny is gone. She will not be back after being thrown out like trash. Her voice was filled with triumph. Now I just have to handle the annoying little brat. She paused, then laughed a sharp, ugly sound. Oh, she will not be a problem for long. After I marry Alex, I will ship her off to some boarding school in Switzerland. Alex will be sad for a while, but I can handle him. Men are easy to persuade if you know how. With that child gone, everything will be simpler. The money, the power, it will all be mine. It should have been mine 8 years ago, before that Isabel girl ruined everything. Victoria had no idea that just a few feet away, behind a slightly open playroom door, a little girl's green eyes were wide with terror. Charlie stood there, hugging her teddy bear so tightly her knuckles were white. She heard every single word. Emmy was a problem. She was an annoying brat. Boarding school far away. The 5-year-old did not understand all of it, but she understood that this woman hated Emmy and hated her. She understood this woman was planning to make them both disappear from her daddy's life. Tears streamed down Charlie's face as she crept backward, her small body trembling. She ran to her room, her heart feeling like it had been torn in two. Charlie woke up that morning with eyes puffy and red from a night of tears. She shot out of bed and ran straight to Emma's room, just like she always did. But the door swung open to reveal a silent, empty space. The bed was made with perfect corners. The closet stood open and bare. The comforting smell of Emma was gone. So was the soft shawl Charlie always snuggled into when her nanny held her. "Where is Emmy?" Charlie asked when Maggie, the housekeeper, found her. Her voice was a small tremble, her green eyes wide with confusion. "Where is Emmy? Why is her room empty?" Maggie knelt, bringing her face level with the child's. Her own heart ached as she forced the words out. "Emmy is gone, sweetheart." She spoke softly, trying to keep her voice steady. "Emmy does not live here anymore." Charlie froze, as if she had been turned to stone. "Gone where? When is she coming back?" Maggie had no answer. She could only shake her head and reach for the little girl, but Charlie pulled back from her touch. "No. Emmy will be back. She promised she would never leave me. Emmy promised." She darted through the house, calling Emma's name over and over. "Emmy, Emmy, where are you? Stop hiding, Emmy. I found you." But there was no reply. No warm arms wrapped around her from behind like they always did during their games. That day, Charlie refused her breakfast. She sat staring at the plate of pancakes Maggie made, her favorite food, but never picked up her fork. By noon, she had not eaten a thing. By dinner, she took only 2 small sips of milk before pushing the glass away. Her father, Alex, tried to comfort her, but Charlie just looked at him with a strange, distant expression that pained him. Then she turned away without a word. The second day was even worse. Charlie did not touch her toys or watch any cartoons. She did not want to read any books. She only sat by the large window in the living room, the one that looked out at the main gate of the estate, and she waited. She waited for Rob's black car to pull up with Emmy inside. She waited for the familiar shape of her nanny to walk through that iron gate. She waited for a miracle she knew would come. Maggie brought her cookies and a glass of warm milk, but Charlie just shook her head. "I do not want it. I only want Emmy." Rob tried to make her laugh with his usual jokes, but the little girl would not even spare him a glance. A heavy, sad silence fell over the entire mansion, as if the house itself was grieving the loss of Emma. That night, the sound of Charlie's crying filled the hallway. Alex rushed into his daughter's room. He found her curled into a ball on her bed, clutching a teddy bear. It was the one Emma gave her for her birthday last year. "Emmy, Emmy," she sobbed. "I want Emmy. I want Emmy to come back." Alex sat on the bed beside her and tried to gather her into his arms. "Daddy is here, Charlie. Daddy is with you." But Charlie pushed him away. Her eyes were red and swollen as she stared at him, filled with a hurt that broke his heart. Why did Emmy leave me? Was I bad? Why did Emmy not say goodbye? Alex could not speak. The words caught in his throat as he watched his daughter fall apart. That night, Charlie's skin grew hot to the touch. Maggie checked her temperature and frowned with worry. "She has a fever." It was a fever born from crying too much, from refusing to eat or drink, from a sadness too big for her small body. On the third day, Victoria arrived, her face a perfect mask of concern. "I heard Charlie was not feeling well," she said to Alex, her voice full of false sympathy. "Let me go see her." She entered Charlie's room with the sweetest smile she could produce. "Hello, my dear. Aunt Victoria is here to visit. Would you like me to read you a story?" Charlie's response was immediate and shocking to both Victoria and Alex, who stood in the doorway. The little girl sat bolt upright in bed, her eyes blazing with fear and rage. "Go away! I do not want you here," Charlie shrieked, her voice raw. "Go away! You are a bad person." Victoria took a step back, her mask of sadness slipping for just a moment. She turned to Alex, her voice now a carefully crafted whisper. "She is just so upset. The fever is making her say these things. I will go downstairs while you try to calm her." But as Victoria walked back into the hall, her eyes held a flash of cold anger. That little brat would regret this. Alex stood frozen, staring at his daughter. The small girl was trembling on the bed, her eyes filled with tears and a very real fear. It was the first time she had seen Victoria since he fired Emma. A true sliver of doubt finally entered his mind. Charlie had never acted this way toward anyone. She was a gentle and sweet child, always polite. Why was she so terrified of Victoria? Why did she dislike her so intensely? And why did he have a sudden, sinking feeling that he had missed something critical? On the third night, Charlie's fever rose even higher. Alex sat by her bed starting at 9 o'clock that evening. He watched her small form curled under a light blanket, her cheeks a deep red, her lips dry and cracked. In her arms, she held an old brown teddy bear, the gift from Emma, the only thing she had left of her nanny. She clutched it like a lifeline in a stormy sea. Alex touched his daughter's forehead. The heat that met his palm made his chest tighten. His little girl, the person he loved more than life itself, was suffering a pain that he alone had caused. He leaned over and gently brushed back her tangled, honey-colored hair. "Sweetheart," he whispered, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and fear. "Can you tell Daddy why you are so very sad?" Charlie's eyes fluttered open. Her green gaze, wet with tears, locked onto his. The simple innocence of a 5-year-old was gone. In its place was a deep sorrow and something that looked like disappointment. "You made Emmy go away," she said, her voice small but steady. "Emmy did not do anything wrong, Daddy." Alex felt his body go stiff. He wanted to say something, to defend his choice, but Charlie spoke again. "I know why you sent her away. I know everything." The words, coming from his young daughter, struck Alex like a physical blow. "What do you know?" he asked, his voice shaking. "What could you possibly know about this, Charlie?" She pushed herself up to sit, holding the bear tightly against her chest. "I heard Victoria talking on the phone," she said. Her eyes never left his, and she spoke with a seriousness far beyond her years. "The day she visited, I was playing in the room by the stairs. I heard everything. The air in the room felt heavy, pressing down on Alex's lungs. Victoria said Emmy was a problem," Charlie continued, her voice beginning to tremble at the memory. "She said I was an annoying child. She said after she marries you, she will send me to a school far away. She said things would be much easier if I was not around." Each word from Charlie was like a blade twisting in Alex's chest. He sat there, frozen, unable to process what she was telling him. "Victoria hates me, Daddy." Fresh tears rolled down Charlie's face. "She hates Emmy. She is only nice to you when you are looking. She wanted to get rid of Emmy. She wants to get rid of me too, so she can have you and all the money." I heard her say it. Alex felt as if the world was falling out from under him. The pieces clicked into place, creating a picture that was sickeningly clear. Victoria's phone call that morning, her warnings about how Emma looked at him, her fake worry about the nanny's motives. It was all a perfectly executed act. He had been completely deceived. He, Alexander Thornton, the powerful crime boss feared throughout Charleston, had been manipulated by an ambitious woman. He had believed her lies instead of trusting what he had seen himself for 3 years. He had dismissed Emma, the woman who loved his daughter as her own, who had brought joy back into his home, who had made him feel that life after his wife Isabel could be happy again. "And Emmy never says bad things about anyone," Charlie sobbed. "Emmy really loves me. She sings to me every night until I fall asleep. Emmy baked my birthday cake. She held me when I was crying for Mommy. Emmy never called me a bother. She told me I was the most wonderful thing in the world. Daddy, why did you trust Victoria instead of Emmy?" The question shattered the defenses Alex had spent years constructing. He had not wept in front of another person since Isabel's funeral, but now he felt hot tears stream down his face. He gathered Charlie into his arms, holding her small, feverish body as it trembled with sobs. "I am so sorry," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "I am sorry, Charlie. I was terribly mistaken." "Are you going to bring Emmy home?" Charlie whispered, her face tilted up to his, her eyes shining with hope through her tears. "Promise me, Daddy. You have to promise." Alex hugged her tighter, kissing her hot forehead. "I promise," he vowed, his voice steady despite the tears. "I will get Emmy back. I will correct my error. I give you my word." That night, as Charlie finally fell into a deep sleep, Alex remained by her side. He watched her peaceful expression return. His path forward was clear. Victoria would face consequences. Then he would find Emma and bring her home, even if it meant searching every corner of Charleston. The next morning, Victoria Ashford entered the Thornton mansion with the triumphant air of a conqueror. Dressed in a sophisticated cream outfit, with her hair flawlessly arranged, she smiled as if she already owned the place. She saw Alex in the living room, his back turned to her as he gazed into the garden. "Good morning, my love," Victoria cooed, her voice sugary as she approached to touch his shoulder. "How is Charlie? Is her fever any better? I was concerned about her all night." Alex remained perfectly still. He did not move, his shoulders tense under his dark shirt. When he finally spoke, his tone was cold enough to chill the air. "I am aware of everything, Victoria." Victoria froze, her hand hovering. "What do you mean?" she asked, attempting to sound innocent. "What are you referring to?" Alex faced her, and Victoria flinched, stepping back from the look in his eyes. All the warmth was gone. The exhaustion she had taken advantage of had vanished. All that remained was the icy stare of a crime lord confronting a foe. "I know about the phone call," Alex stated, his words landing like blows. "I know you referred to the nanny as a problem. I know you called my daughter a pest. And I know your plan was to send Charlie away to school once we were married. You assumed I would never find out. But Charlie overheard it all." For a moment, all the color drained from Victoria's face before she regained her composure. "My love," she began, her smile forced and her voice shaky. "She is only 5 years old. She cannot possibly understand. She must have misheard or made it up. Children have wild imaginations." "Stop the performance," Alex interrupted, his tone cutting. "I am finished with your dishonesty. That phone call, your supposed warnings about Emma, it was all a scheme. You needed Emma gone so you would have no obstacles. But you made a mistake." Victoria saw her charade was over. Her sweet expression melted away, revealing a raw bitterness. "She is nothing but a nanny," she yelled, her pretense gone. "A parentless girl with nobody. And you picked her over me. I am Victoria Ashford. My family is distinguished. I have waited for you for 8 years. You owe me this, Alex. You have been in my debt since you ended our engagement for Isabel." Alex advanced on her. With every step he took, she retreated until her back hit the wall. "I am in your debt for nothing," he said, his voice a low threat. "And you made a terrible error when you involved my daughter. You will exit this house now. And you will never be in my presence or Charlie's presence again." "Is that a threat?" Victoria asked, trying to sound firm, but her voice wavered. "Do you forget what I know about your business? The late-night deliveries? The private meetings? I could report this to the authorities immediately." Alex gave a cold laugh that held no humor. "Do you have any idea why the Charleston police leave me alone?" he asked, his tone condescending. "You believe you understand me, but you have only seen the smallest part of who I am, Victoria. Do not be reckless enough to challenge me. Leave now." Victoria was frozen, her face pale and her mouth agape. Her eyes showed true fear as she realized she had challenged a dangerous power and lost badly. Just then, Maggie materialized in the doorway. "I will show you the door," she told Victoria, her voice flat and disrespectful. "Be sure to take all your belongings. You will not be invited back." Victoria spun around and quickly left the room, all her earlier confidence gone. The sound of her heels on the stone floor grew faint before the front door slammed. Maggie looked at Alex, a mix of concern and endorsement in her gaze. "Well, what are you waiting for?" she asked. Her voice became gentle. "You need to find her before you lose your chance." Alex sped through the streets of Charleston, careful not to attract police attention. He could not afford a delay. Every moment created more distance between him and Emma. He soon found himself driving through a part of the city he had never visited. Here, older homes were crowded together, their paint flaking and their roofs worn. It was a world away from his exclusive community. This was a place of regular people with simple lives. This was Emma's world, and he had never bothered to think about it before. He pulled up to a 2-story home with a leaning fence and a yard overgrown with weeds. The employee file indicated this was the address where Emma rented a room. His heart raced as he walked up the noisy wooden stairs and knocked. He had no idea what to say to her. Would an apology be enough? Could she ever forgive him? When the door swung open, it was not Emma. An older woman, perhaps 70 years old with white hair and inquisitive eyes, stood there wearing reading glasses. "Can I help you find someone?" she inquired, her voice slightly hoarse. "I am here to see Emma Sullivan." Alex fought to keep his voice even. His heart pounded against his ribs, but he managed to ask, "She was renting a room here. Was she not, Miss Sullivan?" The older woman raised her eyebrows. "She left this morning." The words struck Alex like a physical blow. "Left," he echoed, the word feeling foreign in his mouth. "Where did she go?" The landlady gave a slight shrug. "I have no idea. She never said. She simply settled her rent, thanked me for everything over the years, and walked out. That poor child. She seemed so heartbroken. Her eyes were puffy, as if she had been weeping for hours. I asked her if anything was wrong, but she just gave me a small smile and said she would be fine." Alex was frozen in place. Emma was gone. She was no longer here. And he had no clue where she could be. "Did she mention any place at all?" he pressed, his voice filled with urgency. "Any town? Any family?" The old woman shook her head. "That girl has no one. She once told me she was raised in an orphanage. No parents, no siblings. For the past few years, I was the closest thing she had to a relative, and our relationship was just landlord and tenant. That poor, dear girl." Alex turned and walked away, forgetting even a simple thank you. His thoughts were a chaotic storm. Emma had no family, no hometown to retreat to. She could be anywhere in this huge country, and he might never see her again. The idea sparked a genuine terror inside him, an emotion Alexander Thornton almost never felt. He slid into his car, grabbed his phone, and dialed Marcus, his most reliable lieutenant in his shadowy enterprise. Marcus answered almost instantly. "Boss, what do you need?" "Find someone for me," Alex commanded, his tone cold and sharp, the one he reserved for high-stakes business. "Her name is Emma Sullivan, 27 years old, brown hair, brown eyes, around 5 feet 5 inches tall. She left her apartment this morning. I want you to cover every airport, bus depot, and train station in this city. Block all the roads leading out of Charleston. I want her found now." "I will get the men moving," Marcus said without question. Alex's influence spread through Charleston and the surrounding counties. He had eyes and ears in law enforcement, at the airport, and within the transportation networks. If Emma was still in the city or had just left, his network would locate her. He had to hold on to that belief. The next few hours were pure agony for Alex. He drove aimlessly through the city streets. He visited the places he knew Emma enjoyed: Waterfront Park, the ice cream parlor by the pier, the public library where she often brought Charlie to read. But there was no trace of her anywhere. His phone finally rang while he was parked at the side of the road, staring without seeing at the crowds. "Boss," Marcus's voice was strained. "We have her. She is at the Central Bus Station. She bought a ticket to Atlanta. The bus departs in 30 minutes. Alex did not wait for Marcus to say another word. He slammed his foot on the accelerator and the car launched forward, tearing through the streets of Charleston. He blew through a yellow light, weaved between cars, and blasted his horn at anyone moving too slowly. A single thought echoed in his mind, a frantic chant. "Do not leave. Please, Emma, do not leave. Give me a chance. Just one more chance. 30 minutes. He had 30 minutes to get to the station, spot Emma in the chaos, and make her believe he was worth forgiving. 30 minutes to salvage everything he had so stupidly thrown away. Never before had Alexander Thornton driven with such reckless speed. Charleston's main bus terminal was a symphony of noise at midday. Horns blared, people shouted across the lot, announcements crackled over loudspeakers, and engines sputtered smoke into the air. Alex screeched to a halt directly in front of the entrance, ignoring the no parking sign and the angry glare from a security guard. He burst through the doors, his gaze scanning the area like a hawk searching for prey. Rows of buses stood waiting, their signs displaying different cities: Atlanta, Savannah, Jacksonville, Columbia. A constant river of people moved around him, pulling suitcases, holding onto children, rushing to their gates. He desperately searched the crowd for a familiar shape, for shining brown hair and a slim figure, but saw only the faces of strangers. His heart beat faster with every second that ticked by, eroding the small amount of hope he had. And then he saw her. Emma was standing at Gate 7, where the Atlanta bus was boarding. She clutched a small, dark blue suitcase, the one he recognized from her room at his estate. The back of her white blouse was creased, looking as though she had been wearing it for a long time. Her brown hair was gathered in a messy, quick ponytail. Even from a distance, he could see her shoulders seem to sag, as if she had not eaten well in days. She was placing her foot on the first step of the bus when he yelled, "Emma, wait!" His voice cut through the noise, sharp enough to make heads turn. Emma turned as well. She paused on the step, one hand on the railing, the other holding her bag. Her brown eyes widened in disbelief as she saw him standing less than 10 paces away. Her face was even paler than he recalled. Dark shadows bruised the skin under her eyes, a testament to too many tears and too little sleep. Even then, her beauty was enough to cause him pain. She slowly backed down the steps and placed her suitcase on the pavement, but she made no move toward him. The gap between them felt like an impossible canyon. "What are you doing here, sir?" Emma asked. Her voice was icy and remote, as if he were a complete stranger. She called him sir, not Alex, like she used to, when they were alone. The formality hit him harder than a physical blow. "Please," Alex began, taking one step forward. He stopped when she immediately stepped back. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" Emma's voice rose, releasing all the pain she had suppressed for days. "Explain why you dismissed me without a single reason? Explain why you looked right past me as if I was invisible that morning in your office? Explain why you said my services were no longer required? As if I was some object to be discarded when you grew tired of it." Emma stopped, catching her breath, her eyes glittering with unshed tears. 3 years, Mr. Thornton. For 3 years, I cared for Charlie. For 3 years, I sang her lullabies every single night. I dried her tears when she missed her mother. I taught her how to read. I sat with her through every sickness and every bad dream. I loved that little girl as if she were my own for 3 years. And you cast me aside like garbage. No reason given. No opportunity to speak for myself. You could not even meet my eyes when you fired me. So tell me, what could you possibly have left to explain? Alex stood motionless, absorbing her words like a whip against his back. He had earned this. He had earned her fury, the anguish in her tone, and the profound disappointment in her gaze. "I know," he said, his voice hoarse. "I was wrong. I was completely and utterly wrong. There is no defense for what I did. But you deserve to know why. Victoria manipulated me." Emma became very still, her brown eyes filled with suspicion. "Victoria called me that morning," Alex continued, acutely aware of the bus preparing to leave. "She told me the way you looked at me was improper, that you had dangerous intentions. I was a fool. I listened to her instead of trusting what I had seen with my own eyes for 3 years. I sent you away because of a lie. And Charlie," he saw the change in Emma's expression at the mention of his daughter's name. "Charlie overheard Victoria talking on the phone with a friend. She heard Victoria call you a problem, call her an irritating child. She heard Victoria say she would ship her off to a boarding school as soon as we were married. Charlie told me everything. Since you left, she refuses to eat. She cannot sleep. All she does is cry and ask for you. She has been running a fever for 3 days, Emma. 3 days. She will not stop calling your name. Emmy. Emmy. She just keeps calling for you in her sleep." Alex's voice cracked. "I am so sorry. I am sorry that I ever doubted you. I am sorry I sent you away. I am sorry for the immense pain I caused both you and Charlie. But please do not get on that bus. Do not leave Charlie. She needs you. And I need you. The bus driver sounded the horn, a long blast indicating 5 minutes until departure, but neither Alex nor Emma flinched. They remained locked in their own world amidst the bustling crowd. Emma stared at him, her gaze a war between deep hurt and another feeling she would not acknowledge. So this was all because of Victoria, she said, her voice laced with bitterness. One phone call, a handful of words, and you were willing to destroy everything. 3 years with you and Charlie meant absolutely nothing next to her lies. Alex took a slow, deep breath. He knew this was the moment for total honesty, with no more walls to hide behind. In the world I live in, he started, his voice low and steady, feelings are a liability. If you care for someone, your enemies will use that person to hurt you. If you put your faith in someone, they will use that faith to betray you. I saw my own father murdered by the man he called his best friend. I have seen countless people destroyed because they made the mistake of loving or trusting someone. He paused, his eyes fixed on hers. So, I taught myself to suspect everyone. It is how I stayed alive in that life. It is the reason I am here today when so many others are gone. I built a fortress around my heart. I did not let anyone get in. I never allowed anyone to get close enough to cause me harm. But you, his voice softened, and a look appeared in his eyes that Emma had never witnessed in the powerful man before her. You made me want to be weak. I would watch you with Charlie. The way you comforted her. The way you two would laugh together. The way you made that empty house feel like a home. And I saw a family. For the first time since Isabel passed away, I wanted to believe in it again. I was afraid to feel something real again, to have a connection, to love openly. I was terrified of that emotion, of the gentleness you introduced into my world. So when Victoria created suspicion, I used it as a reason to drive you away before I let you get too close. I acted like a coward, Emma. The truth is, I feared you more than any opponent I have ever faced. Emma listened quietly, absorbing his confession. She was torn between wanting to believe his words and the terror of being wounded again. How am I supposed to trust you? She finally asked, her voice unsteady. You betrayed me once. You could betray me again. What happens in the future? Some other woman makes an accusation and I am dismissed. Another unfounded doubt arises and I am forced to leave. I am not sure I could endure that a second time. You are right to question me, Alex said with conviction. I have not earned your trust. After my actions, I understand completely if you get on that bus and never look back. I would not hold it against you. But I am begging for a single opportunity. Give me one chance to show you that I can change, that I can become someone who deserves your confidence. I will prove it with my behavior, not with promises. Day by day, I will demonstrate that I am no longer the fearful man who sent you away. The horn of the bus blared once more, a final call for departure. The driver glared impatiently in Emma's direction. Her gaze shifted from the bus back to Alex, then back to the bus. She was at a pivotal moment, and this decision would alter the course of her life. If I return, she began, each word chosen with great care, I will require time. Time to absorb what has taken place. I cannot act like nothing is wrong. I cannot resume my old life. Alex nodded, holding his breath, terrified of breaking the delicate understanding between them. And let me be perfectly clear about something, Emma added, her voice gaining a sharp edge. I am returning for Charlie, not for you. The little girl is hurting, and I will not abandon her. That is it. Do not hope for anything more from me. Alex studied her face, a small flame of hope igniting in his gaze. Only for Charlie? He asked quietly. Emma gave no reply. She simply stood there, her eyes filled with 1,000 unspoken feelings. In that quiet space, they both understood the reality. It was not just for Charlie. It was never just for Charlie. The doors of the bus hissed shut, and it began to pull away from the station, leaving Emma on the curb. She bent down, picked up her suitcase, and walked past Alex toward the exit. He stood frozen for a beat, unable to process his relief, then rushed to follow her. He would not let her get away this time. The black car moved through the familiar Charleston streets as the sun set in a blaze of gold. Emma sat in the back, gazing out the window. Her eyes were open, but she saw nothing. The last few hours played over and over in her mind. Just this morning, she was planning to escape the city for good. She was going to start a new life where the memory of Charlie and Alex could not reach her. But here she was, on her way back to the mansion she never expected to enter again. The afternoon sun painted the white colonial walls gold as the car came to a stop at the gate. It was the same light, the same walls, the same path leading to the entrance. Yet everything had changed. The day she left, her heart was in pieces and tears streamed down her face. Today she came back with a tiny thread of hope, a whisper of a second chance. Alex got out of the car first, then opened her door. Emma stepped out and took a deep breath. The familiar smell of magnolia flowers hung in the air. Before she could move, the front doors flew open. Maggie was standing there, her apron still dusted with flour. Her old eyes were red and filled with tears. "Thank God," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank God you are back. You are back." Rob stood right behind her. For the first time in the 3 years Emma had worked there, she saw the quiet man truly smile. It was not his usual polite gesture. It was a warm smile of relief, of pure joy. "You are back," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "That is good." But Emma had no time to answer. A scream cut through the quiet evening. "Emmy!" Charlie flew out from behind Maggie. Her little legs moved so fast she almost stumbled on the steps. Her blonde hair streamed behind her. Her green eyes were wide with a joy that seemed too big for her small face. And she wore the most brilliant smile Emma had ever seen. "Emmy is back. Emmy is back." Emma fell to her knees just as Charlie crashed into her. Tiny arms wrapped around her neck, holding on as if Emma might vanish. The little girl's body shook with laughter and sobs all at once. Emma hugged her back, clutching the child she loved as if she were her own. Tears she did not expect streamed down her cheeks. It had only been 3 days, but it felt like 3 years. 3 days without hearing Charlie laugh, without holding her close, without singing her to sleep. 3 days that Emma feared would stretch into forever. But now the child was in her arms again, so real and so warm. "Emmy," Charlie sobbed into her shoulder, her tears soaking the fabric of Emma's shirt. "Emmy came back. Emmy will not go again. Okay? Promise me. Promise me, Emmy. Promise you will never leave me again." "I promise," Emma whispered, her own voice breaking. "I promise, sweetheart. I am not going anywhere. I will be here with you. Do you believe me?" "Okay." They remained there on the gravel drive, holding one another while everyone else watched in silence. Alex stood a short distance away, his own eyes glistening. Maggie dabbed at her tears with her apron, and Rob turned his head, clearing his throat loudly. Only when Maggie spoke gently, announcing that dinner was ready, and they should go inside before dark, did Charlie finally relax her hold. Even so, she clung to Emma's hand, unwilling to let go for a single moment. The meal that night was the warmest the mansion had known in 3 years. The four of them gathered at the kitchen table, forgoing the formal dining room. It was just Alex, Emma, Charlie, and Maggie. There was no formality, no distance, only quiet conversation, gentle laughter, and looks of deep gratitude. Charlie sat pressed against Emma's side, refusing to eat unless Emma brought the spoon to her mouth, refusing to drink unless Emma held the cup for her. She recounted the days Emma was gone, telling her how much she had cried, how she called out for Emmy each night, and how she never let go of the teddy bear Emma had given her. Emma listened, stroking Charlie's hair, and felt something broken inside her slowly begin to mend. After they finished eating, Emma took Charlie upstairs just like she always did. Charlie changed into her pajamas, brushed her teeth, and then climbed into bed, clutching her teddy bear. "Settle down, little princess," Emma said softly, tucking the covers around her. "It is time for sleep now." "Will Emmy sing for me?" Charlie asked. "Just like always. Just like always, my sweet." Emma perched on the edge of the mattress, running her fingers through Charlie's golden hair, and started the lullaby she had sung countless times over the last 3 years. Her voice was calm and gentle, filled with all the affection she had for this child. Charlie held onto Emma's hand, her green eyes gradually drifting shut, a peaceful smile on her lips for the first time since the day Emma had gone. Charlie was sound asleep before the song was over. Emma lingered for a few minutes, watching the child's angelic face, and swore to herself that she would never let her feel that kind of pain again. Whatever happened with Alex, whatever the future brought, she would always be there for Charlie. Emma quietly closed Charlie's bedroom door and paused in the hallway for a moment. She could hear the child's even breathing from the other side, and she smiled in relief. Charlie would sleep peacefully tonight. She descended the staircase, walked through the silent living room, and stepped out onto the mansion's rear porch. This was her favorite spot, a place where she could watch the Cooper River flow under the moonlight and listen to the wind in the ancient oak trees. The moon was full and bright that night, casting a path of shimmering silver across the dark water. Emma rested her hands on the wooden railing, taking a deep breath of the cool, crisp Charleston air. She heard soft footsteps behind her and knew it was Alex before she even turned. He came and stood next to her, leaving a comfortable space between them. They both looked out at the river, sharing a long silence. It was not a tense or awkward quiet like before. It was an easy stillness, the kind that exists between two people who no longer need words to fill the emptiness. "Isabel enjoyed standing here too," Alex said after some time, his voice soft and thoughtful. "On moonlit nights like this one, she would come out and sit for hours. She said the river helped her clear her head." Emma did not respond. She simply listened. It was the first time Alex had ever spoken of his late wife to her in a personal way, not related to work or Charlie. "She would have liked you," Alex continued, his gaze still on the distant water. "She always said I needed someone to rescue me from my own darkness. Someone who would not fear my world, but also would not let it consume her. She was afraid that after she passed, I would close my heart off for good. It seems she was right." He finally turned to face Emma. "Until you came along." Emma felt her heart beat a little, faster, but she kept her voice even. "I am not anyone special. I am just an orphan with a college education and a strong work ethic." "Tell me about your childhood," Alex asked gently. "I have come to realize I know very little about your life, other than what was on your application." Emma paused for a second before she spoke. "I was raised in an orphanage. I had no father, no mother, no siblings. I had no one to call my family. For 18 years, I was there, watching other kids get adopted, while I was always left behind. I learned not to expect things from people, and not to depend on anyone, because eventually, they all go away." She stopped, her eyes looking into the distance. "But being here with Charlie," she went on, her voice becoming softer, "was the first time in my life I understood what it was to belong. It was the first time someone waited for me in the morning, needed me at night, and loved me with no conditions. She gave me what I had never had in 27 years, a family, even if it was not truly mine." Alex did not say a word. Instead, his hand moved slowly across the railing until it covered Emma's. He enclosed her small hand in his grip gentle but firm. Emma felt the warmth from his touch seep into her skin, and she did not pull back. She let her hand rest in his, a quiet form of acceptance. "Thank you for giving me a second chance," Alex said, his voice low and sincere. "I know I do not deserve it, but I will try every day to be worthy." Emma turned and looked at him. The moonlight shone in her brown eyes. "Do not waste it," she said. Those 4 words were both a warning and a promise. Alex nodded, squeezing her hand gently. They stood there under the Charleston moon, watching the Cooper River glitter. For the first time, they were not employer and employee. They were just 2 people who had been hurt, trying to find their way to each other. The following days felt like a dream Emma was afraid to believe. Alex Thornton, the feared Mafia boss of Charleston, was changing before her eyes. The man who came home at 10 o'clock at night, when Charlie was already asleep, now came through the door at 6 in the evening. He was home for dinner with his daughter, listening to her talk about her day. The man who once only understood numbers and secret meetings now spent his afternoons playing hide-and-seek with Charlie in the garden. He let her climb on his back and pretend he was a horse. He sat for hours while she read from her picture books, even though she still lisped. He even started showing up in the kitchen each morning to learn how to make pancakes from Maggie, even when his first attempts were completely black and Maggie had to bite her lip to stop from laughing. But he did not quit. By the 5th day, his pancakes were perfectly round and golden. Emma watched all this happen in silence. Her heart started to soften, but her mind warned her to be careful. She had been hurt before, and the wound was still fresh. But with every day that passed, with every small thing Alex did, the wall around her heart began to crumble. Then one morning arrived. Emma was sound asleep when a small, energetic body bounced on her bed, waking her up. "Wake up, Emmy! Wake up!" Charlie yelled into her ear, her little hands shaking Emma's shoulders over and over. "Today is important." Emma blinked, looking at Charlie's bright face above her. The little girl's blonde hair was messy from sleep, but her green eyes shined like they held 1,000 stars. "Important for what, sweetie?" Emma asked, her voice thick with sleep. "What day is it?" Charlie gave her a secret smile, the kind kids have when they know something big. "I cannot say. It is a secret. But Emmy has to get up now. Hurry, Emmy." She took Emma's hand and pulled her up with all the strength a 5-year-old has. Emma barely had a moment to process anything before her bedroom door swung open and Alex entered, holding a big wooden tray. On it was a tall stack of pancakes, a bowl of colorful fresh fruit, and 2 cups of steaming coffee. "Good morning," Alex said. His smile made him look 10 years younger. "I am serving breakfast this morning." Emma stared at him. Then she looked at Charlie, and back to him, unable to process what she was seeing. The most powerful Mafia boss in Charleston was standing in her room with a breakfast tray. He was wearing a plain t-shirt and khakis, looking like the most normal father in the world. "It was my idea," Charlie said with pride, crawling onto the bed next to Emma. "I told Daddy to make you breakfast, Emmy. Daddy did good. The pancakes are not burnt anymore." Alex placed the tray in the middle of the bed and sat on the other side. And just like that, the 3 of them were eating breakfast together in Emma's bed. Charlie sat between them, happily eating pancakes and talking about 100 things at once. Then, she suddenly became quiet. Her face grew serious in a way that seemed too old for her. "Emmy," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I know Mommy Isabel is in heaven now. Mommy is not coming back." Emma and Alex both froze, looking at her, shocked. This was the first time Charlie had ever spoken of her birth mother like this on her own. "But Maggie told me a heart is big enough to love lots of people," Charlie continued, her green eyes focused on Emma. "So I love Mommy Isabel in the sky. And I love Emmy too, both at the same time. Is that okay, Emmy?" Tears filled Emma's eyes before she could stop them. She pulled Charlie into a tight hug and started to cry. "Of course it is okay, sweetheart," she sobbed. "Of course it is. Your heart is big enough to love the whole world." Alex sat watching them, his own eyes wet. His little girl, the child he worried would never recover from her mother's death, was opening her heart to new love without letting go of the old. She had grown. She had matured so much more than he expected. Charlie suddenly pulled away from Emma and turned to her father with a determined look. "Now it is your turn," she yelled, startling both of them. "You promised. You promised me last night that you would say it this morning. Say it, Daddy." Alex cleared his throat. His face turned red like a teenager admitting to a crush. He looked at Emma with a shyness she had never seen from a mafia boss. Then he took a deep breath, as if he was getting ready for the biggest fight of his life. Alex looked at Emma, and his deep blue eyes held a sincerity she had not seen in their 3 years together. He took a long breath. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled, as if he was releasing words that had been locked inside him for far too long. "Emma," he started, saying her name gently. "I know that I hurt you. I know I was a coward. I pushed you away because I was afraid of my feelings. I know I was unfair to you. I believed someone else instead of what I had seen with my own eyes for 3 years. And I know you have every right not to trust me. You have every right to tell me no, to get up and walk away from me right now." Emma sat completely still. Her heart was beating so hard she thought the entire room could hear it. She did not say a word. She just watched him and waited. "But these past few days have shown me something I cannot deny," Alex went on, his eyes locked with hers. "I love you, Emma. I do not love you because you are a good nanny for Charlie. I do not love you for any practical reason. I love you because you are you. I love the way you care for Charlie, the way you sing her to sleep at night, the way you have so much patience with her tantrums and her endless questions. I love how you turned this cold house into a real home. You brought laughter back into rooms that were silent for too long after Isabel died. I love that you make me want to be a better man, a better father, and a better person. Before I met you, I believed my life was just the darkness of my world and the sadness of losing my wife. But you brought light into my life, and I did not see it until I almost lost you forever." Alex's fingers found hers, his grip gentle but firm, as if he feared she might fade away. "I want to build a life with you. Not one where you work for me. A real life, a real family, where you are cherished and safe. I need to do this properly, with the respect you have always deserved. Please let me love you for the rest of our days." Emma looked around the room as emotion tightened her throat. Charlie sat next to her, her small hands clenched together, her green eyes wide with a fragile, desperate hope. By the door, Maggie was quietly wiping away tears with her apron, her shoulders shaking. And right in front of Emma was Alex. The man who had once wounded her so deeply now stood before her with his heart wide open. There were no more walls, no more masks, just honesty, waiting for her answer. Emma thought of her 27 years of profound loneliness, with no one to call her own. She remembered the dream of a little girl in an orphanage, a dream of a warm home and a place to belong. And now that dream was within her grasp, if only she could be brave enough to take it. Yes. The word was a quiet breath, barely a sound, but it was certain. "Yes," she repeated, her voice stronger now, her eyes locked on his. "I do." A brilliant light broke across Alex's face, like the sun after a terrible storm. He raised his hands to her face, his thumb gently brushing away a tear on her cheek. Then he leaned in and kissed her. It was a soft, sweet kiss, filled with the promise of a future neither had ever thought possible. It tasted of coffee and hope, of happy tears and a long, painful wait. "Yay!" Charlie's shout cut through the quiet moment, but nobody minded. She bounced on the bed, clapping her hands. Daddy and Emmy kissed like in a movie. "So is Emmy my mom now, Daddy?" Emma and Alex separated, both of them laughing. Charlie turned to Emma, her eyes shining. "Can I call you Mom?" "Please, Emmy, please. I am begging you. I will be good. I will eat my vegetables. I will not ask to stay up late. Please let me call you Mom." Emma glanced at Alex, seeking his approval. He just smiled and nodded, his own eyes wet with emotion. "It is your decision. I will support you no matter what." Emma looked back at Charlie. this child she already loved as her own, the child who taught her what it felt like to be needed. "Yes, sweetheart," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "If you want to, you can call me Mom." "Mom!" Charlie screamed with pure joy and threw herself into Emma's arms, clinging to her neck as if she would disappear. "Mom! My mom! I have a mom now! I really have one!" Emma held Charlie tight, tears streaming down her own face. For 27 years, that word had never been hers to hear. She never thought she would. Spoken by a 5-year-old girl with golden hair, it was the most beautiful music she had ever heard. "Hello, my daughter," Emma whispered, holding Charlie close. "Hello, my Charlie." Alex wrapped his arms around both of them, creating a perfect circle of love. In the doorway, Maggie was now sobbing openly into her apron. On that sunlit Charleston morning, in a small room with a cold breakfast tray, a new family was born. Not of blood, but of love. Not by duty, but by choice. A family of wounded hearts, finding their healing in each other. The three of them remained in that embrace on the messy bed, none of them ready to let go. Charleston's morning sun poured through the window, filling the room with a warm golden light. The darkness of doubt was gone. The pain of being apart had vanished. The walls of fear had crumbled. There were only 3 people, 3 hearts, and a love that was big enough to hold them all. Suddenly, Charlie lifted her head, her green eyes wide as she stared at the window. "Look," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "A butterfly." Emma and Alex turned to see where she was pointing. On the windowsill, a bright yellow butterfly rested, its wings beating softly. It paused there for a few seconds, a silent observer to the scene inside. Then it took flight, soaring into the clear blue sky until it was gone. "Mommy Isabel sent that," Charlie said with the pure certainty of a child who believes in magic. "She is so happy. She is telling us she agrees. She likes Emmy being my new mom." Alex held the 2 most important people in his life a little tighter, watching the sky where the butterfly had disappeared. "I think so too, sweetheart," he said, his voice deep with feeling. "I am sure Mommy Isabel is very happy. She always wanted us to be happy." They hugged again, this time with smiles instead of tears. Outside, the city of Charleston was starting a new day. But in that room, a new life was just beginning. Their story had started with injustice, with a wrong choice and the pain it caused. But it ended with happiness, with forgiveness, and with a love strong enough to overcome any obstacle. This family was built by choice, not by blood. Theirs was a love that was decided on, nurtured, and protected every single day. An orphan woman found the family she had dreamed of for 27 years. A man who had locked his heart away learned how to open it again. And a little girl got the mother she chose for herself. 3 hearts that had been adrift finally found their home, together. If this story touched you, if it made you believe in second chances and the power of love, then please help us share this message. Please hit the like button, share this video with people who need to hear this story, and subscribe to our channel. Turn on your notifications so you do not miss our soul-stirring stories every day. We would love to hear what you feel. How did this story make you feel? Have you ever met people like Emma, who love with all their heart but are misunderstood? Or have you made a mistake like Alex, trusting someone else's words over what you could see for yourself? Leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from. We are always so happy to know our stories are reaching every part of the world. Please remember that sometimes the most valuable people are standing right in front of us. But pride, fear, or someone else's words can make it hard to see them. Do not make the same mistake Alex did. Treasure the people who truly love you before it is too late. Before we finish, we want to send our warmest wishes to all of you watching. We wish you good health, a joyful life, and peace every single day. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our story. Goodbye, and we will see you in the next video.